One thing too that struck me reading Saint Maximus, which I'm sure you would resonate with, and I want to get your comment on this, is Maximus has a very positive view of nature, the natural world, and so he sees the natural world as, in fact, one of the embodiments of the Logos. And he speaks of, three different embodiments. He speaks of the embodiment of the Logos in the Virgin, the embodiment in the humanity that he took in the Virgin, and then he speaks of the embodiment in the church and in nature, in the sense of he calls it a veil that the Logos wears. And I'm curious, is there a relationship between iconography and the natural world, in the sense that is there a regularity to the way iconography presents animals, trees, life, basically, in the natural world?
Well, many icons, they represent the desert. Like most of the icons, they tend to represent the world as the desert. And so you can see, then there's something of the wilderness, let's say. So there's something of monastic, very monastic about, how the iconographic tradition got developed. So that's why you'll always see behind Christ these cracked earth, these kind of cracked earth mountains. And you see often cracks at the bottom of the world, with holes where sometimes you can see darkness at the bottom. And so usually it's seen as wilderness. And so there's there's more of an aesthetical vision in, let's say, the way that the iconographical tradition got transmitted. But there are other ways to see what St. Maximus talked about, which I see it has to do with ornamentation. So in a church, what you'll have images, but then also between the images, you'll have foliage, you'll have foliage with animals in them, and all this kind of a natural space. So you can actually get that hierarchy of revelation in the very structure of how images present themselves. Like if you look at a medieval manuscript, like even a Western medieval manuscript, you really get that structure where you have the image in the center, and then on the outskirts of the image, you'll have foliage. You'll have all these ornaments that are made of leaves and have animals in them, and sometimes even have monsters and gargoyle type creatures. And so there is this idea of this kind of basic cosmic image of everything kind of participating in this pattern, even up to the end of the world, you could say. And so I think that that's probably the best way to see it. But in icons, really, we've developed this more of an aesthetic image. So the trees are very sparse. There's kind of there's more of a desert imagery. If you look at the icons, you'll start to notice it, if you haven't noticed it before, that tends to be the way that the tradition developed.
Interesting. Yeah. And this life being that passage through the desert, wandering to, the eschaton being, the promised land. I wanted to ask too about, you mentioned we were talking about Neoplatonism earlier, and when I first met you, we had heard a lecture about the Neoplatonic idea, the Plotinian idea of this sort of journey that goes on from creatures that sort of go out from God, and then they go through a process, a cycle, and they come back to God. Yeah. Even the pagans seem to have had a notion, as we know from like the Orphic mysteries and this kind of stuff, of nature goes through this sort of cycle, right? Yeah. Of birth, death, resurrection. And then we have a cycle, obviously, in the church as well, where we have the liturgical cycle. And I've always just found it amazing, if we think about it, that the whole purpose of the liturgical cycle is actually a commentary, in a way, on nature, the cycle of the natural world. It's like the real meaning of the natural world is this stuff, is the liturgical cycle. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I think that it's actually a key that a lot of people want to dismiss because they're afraid that they are paganism. So a lot of people, if you point to them, right? So you've heard that argument before, right? It's like, the nativity of Christ is just a solstice, that the Christians try to take over, all that kind of nonsense. But I think that we can actually flip that back on it, because I do believe it is about the solstice, but what it's doing, it's actually revealing the cosmic mystery of the solstice in the incarnation of Christ, in the darkness of the cave, this hidden mystery which is not yet completely revealed in the lowest place, in the manger, in the place where the animals eat, like the lowest part of the world. And then will start to reveal himself, as the year kind of moves on. And so like, to me, that's not a problem at all. And of course, right. I mean, you know, the fact that we have the Dormition at the fall, all of these things make complete sense in terms of just the natural cycle of things. But right. like you said, it's not, people see it in the upside down way. They think that, oh, it's just Christians trying to take over these pagan holidays. And not these pagan holidays. These are just natural cycles that God created.
Yeah.
And Christians are now trying to reorient them towards their ultimate meaning. And even if they do use, and I don't even have a problem to the extent that sometimes Christian actually took some of the pagan elements mm-hmm. and then redirected them towards their fullness of meaning. Sure. Either. It doesn't bother me at all, because if you tell me that Christmas isn't about celebrating the nativity of Christ, then you're just, it's bull. Like that's what we celebrate. And if there are some, like say the Christmas tree, like some people say, oh, this is an old pagan tradition, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, fine. But when I look at a Christmas tree, it's like, I don't know, I see a star up there and I see all these lights going down, and then I see Christ below in the manger. And I'm like, I know that's a pretty good pattern. I don't have a problem with it at all.